know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
no spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Rishi Sunak has powerfully pledged to protect women's rights against gender extremism. So how could anyone vote for Slippery Starmer's anti-female, anti-science mob now?
Woman can have a penis.
Look, I'm not. Is it transphobic? Look.
I'll tell you why a Conservative government is now the only way to end the left's existential threat to women. That's in my digest next. They're my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, I'm joined by Amanda Patel, Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Also coming up, as it's revealed, job-seeking Indians are now the second biggest cohort of Channel migrants. Robert Jenrick makes a rallying call for British sovereignty.
States are to retain their sovereignty, their ability to exclude individuals from their territory, then they will need to find new ways to enforce their laws.
So is the Immigration Minister right to sound the alarm on the left's dangerous obsession with mass migration? That's our big debate in the next hour. Elsewhere tonight, Nicola Sturgeon has broken cover and appeared at Holyrood for the first time since her husband Peter Murrell's bombshell arrest.
I could not have anticipated in my worst nightmares what would have unfolded over the past few weeks.
So should the Conservative government capitalise on the nightmare crisis engulfing the SNP and put devolution in reverse? Tory grandee and Brexit hero Lord Frost has ruffled some separatist feathers with that suggestion, but he argues his case live in the studio soon. Also on the way, in a scene reminiscent of Charles and Diana's failing marriage, Meghan swerved a kiss from Harry at an NBA game yesterday. So, will that cringeworthy moment only fuel claims of a Sussex implosion? Meghan's biographer Tom Bower gives his unmissable analysis of the explosive rumours swirling around the Montecito moaners. Plus, as the British Bashing Corporation as a panorama, it really was a panorama hit job, actually, suggesting that Harry and Meghan have turned young people off the royal family.
But some young people may have been alienated by what's been happening within Charles's own family.
So has the Sussexes' hate campaign caused terminal damage to the British monarchy? Angela Epstein dukes it out with Dr. Tessa Dunlop in the clash. Doddery Joe Biden announced an ambitious second run for the White House.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are.
But could the dementia-plagued president's stubborn refusal to retire cost the Democrats the election? Nigel Farage investigates. Plus, it sounds like the Donald fancies his chances against Sleepy Joe.
But he's doing a tape. This way he can do it 4 or 5 times so he gets it right.
More of Trump's blistering attack on Biden later in the media buzz. And as The Times reveals, officials who work for Dominic Raab raised concerns that senior managers were plotting to remove him from office. Does this prove it was a political stitch-up by the British deep state? Our Tory culture warrior, the former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins, who actually has worked under Raab in the past, is going to give her unflinching take on the snowflake civil service. As ever, stay tuned for a first look at tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press, plus a brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass crown before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Not often I start with a positive digest about our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, but tonight that's all going to change straight after the news with Bethany Elsey.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The first flight carrying British nationals out of Sudan has landed in Cyprus with around 40 people on board. Rishi Sunak says there'll be 2 more flights overnight and many more tomorrow. It's understood there are around 4,000 British passport holders in Sudan. There's been fierce fighting between Sudan's army and a rival paramilitary group for more than 2 weeks, and the UK's rescue effort was given the go-ahead after they agreed to a 72-hour ceasefire. But there have been reports of gunfire and explosions in major cities, which are making extractions perilous.
The first flight that left took everybody that was at the airfield and eligible is on that flight. There will be more flights this evening and then many more into tomorrow. We're contacting people both directly, but also we've issued out a general call for people if they can make their way to the airfield, they will then be processed. We can't guarantee the long-term sustainability of the airfield that we're currently using, so we're also exploring and standing up other alternative routes for safe exit.
Nicola Sturgeon has spoken out about the police investigation into SNP finances, saying she couldn't have imagined the events of the past few weeks in her worst nightmares. The former First Minister also said it wasn't true that she stepped down because she knew problems were about to unfold within her party. She was appearing at the Scottish Parliament for the first time since her husband's arrest. Peter Murrell, the party's former chief executive, was questioned by police earlier in the month and later released without charge. The party's treasurer, Colin Beattie, was also arrested last week and released pending further investigation. President Joe Biden has officially announced he's running for a second term in office, saying the next election will be a fight for democracy and personal freedom.
The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. That's why I'm running for re-election.
The US president also confirmed that Vice President Kamala Harris will run again alongside him. Well, Donald Trump has released a video criticising Joe Biden for the so-called damage he's caused to the country and has called on his supporters for their vote.
With your support in the election, we will defeat Joe Biden in 2024. We will rescue our economy. We will crush inflation. We will stop the invasion on our southern border. We will restore our nation's dignity, and we will prevent World War III from happening.
And a man who murdered a 2-year-old while her mother was asleep upstairs has been sentenced to life in prison. Kyle Bevan caused catastrophic brain injuries on Lola James in July 2020. She died in hospital 4 days later. The 31-year-old denied responsibility, claiming the family dog pushed her down the stairs. He was convicted in April. Lola's mother, Sinead James, has also been sentenced to 6 years in prison after being found guilty of allowing her daughter's death. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Six months of Fishy Rishi in number 10 has been pretty much as I predicted. A continuation of the globalist coup that installed Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor, with the deep state civil service blob empowered and emboldened after the departure of the Deputy PM, Dominic Raab. But tonight, you might be surprised to learn that I actually want to offer my wholehearted praise to the Prime Minister for tackling arguably the most important social issue of our times with gusto and vigour. That's the protection of women who I believe are now under threat in Britain. There was a time when I feared Mr Sunak might go down the path of slippery Starmer or scheming Sturgeon on this.
Rishi Sunak, what is a woman?
Well, I thought the Prime Minister answered this brilliantly in Prime Minister's Question Times, in Prime Minister's Questions this week, and I fully agree with him.
And so what is your definition of a woman?
As I said, I would exactly agree with what the Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's Question Times. Well, I think if you look at the full thing that he said on Wednesday, he answered the question brilliantly, and I would agree with every word that he said.
But whether it's for political expediency or as a concerned father of 2 daughters, now he's in the top job, Sunak has made enshrining rights of biological women an overarching mission of his premiership. For that, he has nothing but my full respect and support. Today, he took that mission even further by bravely backing the cross-party women's rights delegation of Tory campaigner Miriam Cates and Labour heroine Rosie Duffield, a woman whose brutal treatment by her own party should leave Starmer feeling ashamed. In a powerful essay for the Daily Express, Sunak wrote, "As a father, women's rights are personal to me. And as Prime Minister, it is my job to ensure that women are given every protection the state can put in place. And it's why today I am pledging my support to Cates and Duffield's call to protect women's rights and ensure the dignity of women and girls by preserving single-sex spaces such as women's refuge and rape crisis centres. And when it comes to women's spaces, women's prisons, changing rooms, sports, health, I believe that biological sex really matters. I know what a woman is, and I'll protect women's rights and women's spaces." Couldn't agree more. As well as stopping the votes, the protection of biological sex could be an election-turning issue for the Tories. Remember how quickly Sturgeon was gone after she called a male rapist pretending to be a woman a she? That's not to mention the fact that Labour's most senior faces, both male and female, refuse to accept biological sex, no matter their rhetoric.
A woman can have a penis.
Look, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know...
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just... I just...
Are all trans women women? You haven't answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with here.
That's the question I'm asking.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context...
There are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman.
No, there is...
Is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
Women who are trans deserve to be recognised, and yes, therefore some of them will have penises.
When we debate it to whether or not what genitalia you've got, I think all that does is damage people, and it doesn't help us go forward.
And it gets worse. Rather than protecting women, Starmer is now on a mission to stamp out what Labour describes as laddish behaviour. But that's a diversion. Because make no mistake, there is now an almost daily fight against women. The brilliant feminist academic Kathleen Stock, a brave lesbian ally of J.K. Rowling who staunchly argues for biological sex, has just been deplatformed by woke weasels at Oxford University in, quote, solidarity with the trans community thanks to the extreme views of their LGBT plus society. A biological man competed against women runners in the London Marathon at the weekend as women's sports continues to be attacked by the woke brigade who don't give a damn about female athletes. And just yesterday, the SNP Minister Neil Gray refused to say on the BBC whether the rapist Adam Graham, who became Isla Bryson to enter a women's prison, was a man or a woman.
The Scottish Government worked out in its own mind whether the convicted rapist Isla Bryson is a man or a woman yet?
Well, Humza Yousaf has already said during the leadership campaign that he believes that Isla Bryson was at it in terms of the way that in which they appeared to try to portray themselves. And at the end of the day, Isla Bryson is a rapist and has been treated as such within the Scottish prison system.
So is a man or a woman?
I've already said, in terms of Isla Bryson was convicted as was a man when they committed the rape.
This is pathetic, folks. So look, I know the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has many flaws. I point many of them out. But he has made it clear a Conservative government is the only way to protect women's rights. And for that, I thank him. To respond now, my superstar panel. Top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Plattel, GB News presenter and Conservative commentator Reverend Calvin Robinson, and the author and broadcaster Rebecca Reid. Amanda, are you with me on this? Because I know you've been highly critical of aspects of Sunak's premiership too, but he's got this one so right, hasn't he?
I'm still reeling over the fact that he bullied Dominic Raab out of his job.
Oh, no, I know.
And
I know.
It just makes me sick to even think of anything kind to say about Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, no, I agree with
and
you
it is, it is lovely that we've got a male presenter defending women's rights, and they have been eroded almost without us knowing it.
Yes.
And for Rishi to stand up like this, ironically, the least masculine Prime Minister we've ever had, to stand up and get really tough. You know, he's come out fighting and said, I'm going to defend your rights. This is going to be a deal breaker for me. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you have basically, first of all, I do not think that this will be, I think this is, you know, having worked in politics in this kind of role leading up to an election, I think this will be the softer underbelly of what people will vote for. Because mainly they're going to vote about, you know, the economy, inflation and getting the boats sunk or
stopped.
Did I say sunk? I meant stopped. But this is a really, really important issue. And we, on the blue side, you've got Tories saying we know that a woman doesn't have a penis. And on the red side, you have Labour saying, yeah, women have penises. Yeah. And that's a really clear divide now.
And I do agree with you that usually in elections, of course, it's more important issues of the economy. But Rod Liddle, for example, says actually this woke madness is the most important issue of our times. And I just wonder if you really think the British people will end up voting for someone who says a woman could have a penis.
No, it's Dan, it's mood music. You know, it's basic, it's really important mood music. And maybe Rebecca and I will end up having a bit of a different opinion on this, but I am staunchly in defence of people like J.K. Rowling, people who have defended a woman's right.
Absolutely, they're incredible. And Kathleen Stock.
No-brainer. You've got a penis, you're not a woman.
OK, but Rebecca Reid, do you not feel embarrassed to be on the left when you see your side of the argument refusing to acknowledge your biological sex?
I find it odd that no one's had a comprehensive meeting where they've all agreed what they're going to say, because everybody knows that question's going to be asked of them. But what I find more shocking is when I hear people say things like, you said earlier, women's rights, women are now under threat. 1 in 4 women in the UK experiences sexual assault in their lifetime. Almost 0.7% of the Met have been accused of violence towards women. Every 3.2 days in the UK, a woman is murdered by a man. You're
not questioning any of
now,
that. But none of those people were questioning that those terrible acts, those heinous acts, were being committed against women. The very term, what you are, is now under attack.
Where is the noise for any of those things? Trans people are 0.5% of people. That is including people who transition each way. So we were talking about like 0.5% of people in this country who are trans.
I'm sorry.
It is
You can only protect women. You can only protect women if you are prepared to acknowledge what women are.
That is fundamentally untrue, and also nobody cared about protecting women until it became a virtue signalling political hot potato.
Don't you think, or do you think? Sorry, not to put words into your mouth. I think it's really, really important that women and girls have safe spaces. I think whether it's a changing room at school, whether it's a mixed ward hospital, whether it's a hospital...
Well, there are lots of mixed wards.
Yeah, but they should be stopped. They should be absolutely stopped. I mean... And don't you think it's important to protect especially girls from that kind of... Would you, when you're, 15 years old and getting your first period, want to be in the changing rooms with a blow?
I mean, I fundamentally believe that all loos should be self-contained with a sink because it's accessible. It means that people can use it privately and you don't have that problem.
But that's not practical, unfortunately.
Well, it is. If in schools,
it's not practical.
It is perfectly practical.
It's not practical in a swimming room, changing room. It's simply not.
Most swimming pools have a family changing room anyway. This is a complete misnomer. Most swimming pools, you go in and they have got individual...
But just to answer my question, are you embarrassed by the left in politics who simply can no longer state what a woman is?
I'm more embarrassed for Rishi Sunak, who is trying to basically use a fake threat against women for his own political
Well, it's not a fake threat, Calvin Robinson,
It is a fake threat.
Calvin, it's not a fake threat. It's a very real threat.
So why is this what he cares about? There are so
Well, I don't think he does care about this.
I don't think
he's not going to get any support from me. He's not going to get a clap from me for doing the bare minimum of saying I know what a woman is. I think that's ridiculous. Nor is the Conservative Party going to get any support from me on this issue at all. This is Miriam Cates and Rosie Duffield. This is a cross-party collaboration fighting actually against Conservative Party policy. The RSE bill, sex education in schools, self-ID, the whole premise of a man can identify as a woman and therefore is a woman. All of this is coming under Conservative Party policy. So actually, Rishi Sunak doesn't deserve any credit. It's all rhetoric. What has he done other than speak about it?
OK, what about the Equalities Bill that's coming through, where they're giving the right to schools to only girls' schools to only accept girls into their schools?
They already have that right.
They don't.
They do. What they can't do at the moment is accept a trans child into a single-sex school because then they have to become a non-single-sex school. That's the difficulty.
The new bill that Kemi Badenoch is trying to get through says that biological sex means biological sex.
It is great, but she's having to undermine 12 years of Conservative policy.
Good on her anyway.
I agree. She shouldn't have to do it.
I respect that it's an important issue. I completely understand that. What I'm angry about is it being dressed up as people finally caring about women's rights because there are so many more bigger, more pressing, more realistic actual threats to women than this.
We can care about them too.
OK.
Yeah, you're not to care about more than one thing.
It's so hot
Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel. Goodness me, what's that?
That's a coronation.
You bought a prop.
You just wanted to pull that out, didn't you? You patriot. I love it.
It's so hot in here.
I love it. You're
the viewers don't realise it's an oven in here.
It is warm.
That is actually true, but I want that coronation fan. Goodness gracious me. Amanda Patel, Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reid, do stand by because coming up, sleepy Joe Biden declared his re-election bid overnight, but could the dementia-ridden president's stubborn refusal to retire prove the death knell for Democrats? Nigel Farage gives his analysis soon, but next in the clash after the British-bashing corporation aired a panorama hit job on the royal family, suggesting Harry and Meghan have turned young people away from the British monarchy. Has the Sussex's hate campaign caused irreparable damage to the monarch? Angela Epstein battles with Dr. Tester Dunlop. Next, what do you think? Dan at GBNews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. Back after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
all sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin,
that is... The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Two Brexit heroes on the way, Nigel Farage and Lord David Frost. But first, the clash. And Meghan Markle has finally broken cover after not being spotted with husband Harry in over a month, amid speculation that the couple are leading increasingly separate lives. So last night, they attended an NBA basketball fixture in LA, where Meghan appeared to reject hapless Harry's romantic advances. Now, perhaps it's just me, but this moment took me back to 1992, actually, when Harry's mum, Princess Di, snubbed his father in a similarly public and brutal manner. Remember that? And we all know how that relationship ended. But meanwhile, back in Brighty, the British Bashing Corporation has launched a fresh attack on the royal family just 2 weeks before the coronation, as they released a hit job panorama episode complete with specially commissioned YouGov polls blaming Harry and Meghan for the slump in public support for the monarchy.
Less than 2 weeks to go until the coronation of King Charles. A new poll suggests public opinion about the British royals is changing, with less than a third of 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK wanting the monarchy to continue.
But some young people may have been alienated by what's been happening within Charles's own family.
The potential, I think, that her arrival seemed to offer diminished and whittled away. And I think that's because of some baked-in issues, institutional racism within the core of the monarchy and the monarchy more broadly.
Oh, please. Absolutely typical of the treachery we've come to expect from our supposed state broadcaster. But despite their desperate attempts to paint the public as being against the royal family, the BBC's little online poll actually showed a majority of Brits still support the monarchy. So what do you think, in light of this Beeb hit piece? Do you think the Sussexes have caused terminal damage to the British monarchy? Dan at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. But joining me to tackle this now, the royal columnist and commentator Angela Epstein, and the author of Elizabeth and Philip, which is now in paperback, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. So, Angela Epstein, look, I personally think the BBC are actually becoming quite anti-monarchy now. That's very clear in their coverage. But despite that, you can't deny the huge damage Harry and Meghan have caused, can you?
No, you can't. And actually, there are polls which support that view. I think there was one poll that said amongst Generation Z Brits, and I do get confused with all the demographics, their support dropped for Harry and Meghan by about 40% after his book came out. And that's notwithstanding the damage caused by the Oprah interview as well. There's no doubt that Harry and Meghan, in monetising their lives, the intimate details of their previous involvement with the royal family, the trashing of the royal family, the very difficult statements they've made, many difficult to substantiate, they have done a lot of damage to the royal family. But the royal family, I think, is far bigger than them. And as much as certain quarters are keen to see them as the architect of its decline, I think once the whole pageantry of the coronation kicks in for a start, I think once William and Kate grow more into their roles, and once Harry and Meghan run out of rope to hang themselves with. I mean, you know, there's only so many ways that you can look at the lifestyle they've adopted and look at ways that they can express themselves. We don't care about their views on so many things because it's so obvious that they're vacuous in their approach to so many subjects. So I don't think we care, and I think at some point they'll run out of steam and we'll move on.
Tessa Dunlop, I imagine, just like your favourite people, Harry and Meghan, you're probably going to blame the British press. Imagine my fault.
Actually, funnily enough, you do get a brief mention. You have a cameo in the prologue of my paperback. I do take aim at you and other polemicists.
Oh, there's
because
a surprise.
I think that you've done great damage.
Oh, do you? So it's my fault.
Institution that you purport
Not Harry and Meghan's fault.
By dragging it into dog whistle politics, into the terrain of dog whistle politics. The goodies are Camilla and Charles. Let's park our tanks on their lawn. The baddies are Harry and Meghan. And when I come on, every time I'm billed as, the great supporter of the Sussexes. I'm nothing of the kind, actually. I'm just taking a historic and an impartial view. I'm sorry?
Sounds like you are, but I need to pick you up on something, Tessa, because the only people who have played dog whistle politics with the British monarchy are Harry and Meghan. And they let the Queen, the late Queen, and Prince Philip go to their grave with the world thinking the royal family was racist. And it was only in January that Harry did this pathetic backtrack and said, oh, no, we didn't mean racism, we just meant unconscious bias. So it was them playing dog whistle race politics, not me.
Point is, Dan, I expect more from our fourth estate, of which you are a significant player. I can't control Harry and Meghan. They flagged out fault lines, issues within an institution that spent far too long resting on its laurels, courtesy of the Queen's extraordinary popularity and longevity. I am not saying
they
the
lied.
couple are faultless. I am saying they pointed up fault lines, and you guys, given the chance, got in there and dug with your great big spade. But
So
if you really
Angela
want to
Epstein.
break down this
Tess, let me bring Angela Epstein back into this. So Angela Epstein, if you follow that argument from Tessa Dunlop, we were just meant to ignore the prime-time American TV interview with Oprah Winfrey when they accused that they made an accusation that there was a racist within the royal family. We were just meant to ignore the 6-part Netflix series where they slammed the Commonwealth as a continuation of the British Empire. We should just ignored that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think much as I love Tessa, I think this is an extraordinary hypothesis and a kind of an Olympic scale example of shooting the messenger. We have to remember that when Harry and Meghan first got together and it became public knowledge, there was an enormous reservoir of goodwill that this boy who'd been so badly sort of cast into the wilderness, he was bereaved, nobody gave him any sense of direction, he lost his mum, all the things we know about Harry, and then this glamorous young woman with so much life and vitality, and who'd done good works in her own right, came into the whole kind of world of the royals, and everybody thought, great, a reboot as well, somebody with a broader view. This can only be great for the monarchy. Everybody was thrilled when Harry found Meghan. So the very idea that after that it was some kind of sport to see how we could go on the hunt to find nefarious stories about Harry and Meghan, and bring them down is absolute. It's for the birds. There are so you only have to sit down.
Hang on a minute.
Hang on, Tessa.
But can we just?
Okay, let Tessa come in here.
I'll be very quick.
Okay, make your final point, Angela, then I'll bring Tessa back.
Okay, all I was going to say is if you haven't got paint that needs watching to dry or grass that's growing, you don't want to sit and watch that. Sit through 6 episodes or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The Netflix series. And you have all the evidence you need that this was not a construct of the British press. This was Harry and Meghan who did it beautifully all by themselves.
Okay, Tessa, final word to you now.
Angela talks of we. We'll forget about them. We'll still believe in William and Kate. Who is we? Because actually the polling that the BBC did brought up something very interesting. A lot of young people have always been apathetic about monarchy. That's standard. Young folk don't buy into traditional institutions. However, they bought into it, you're quite right, when Harry and Meghan came along. This looked like an institution that was going to reform. What they were given effectively was a false hope, an idea that didn't exist. The fairy tale comes crashing down. And the problem that we all have to manage now is how that apathy has turned into antagonism, where a significant number, 38% of young people, want a different system. And where I do pin the blame on people like you, Dan, and to an extent you, Angela, is actually you make it look like it's a for and against. You're not trying to find the middle ground. We need to drag our monarchy back into the middle ground because it doesn't work. It's sitting squarely with the tabloid press. It's not fair, and I don't believe it's what King Charles would want.
Okay, thank you both so much. Dr. Tessa Dunlop and Angela Epstein, what do you think? Have the Sussexes caused terminal damage to the British monarchy? Scott on Twitter writes yes, although Harry and Meghan are only a small part of it. The MSM have also made it their mission for years to turn young people against the monarchy. From Susan, I don't like the Sussexes, but I think it's the King's fault. The King is too soft on Harry. Charles needs to come down hard on them or it'll backfire on them. And from Shell, in my view, Harry and Meghan have only caused damage to themselves. The last few months have proved that with the withdrawal of support from celebrities and even the media. And your verdict is now in. 45% of you agree that Harry and Meghan have caused terminal damage to the British monarchy. 55% of you say they have not. A close one tonight. Coming up, as it's revealed that officials working for Dominic Raab raised concerns that high-ranking civil service staff were plotting to remove him from office, does this prove that Raab was the victim of a political stitch-up? Our Tory culture warrior, the former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins, who's worked under Raab, gives her take on the woke civil service hit job soon. But next, Doddery Biden has announced he'll run for re-election as president, but could Sleepy Joe harm the Democrats' chances of success in 2024? Plus, why are Indians making up the second largest cohort of small boat arrivals when they come from a bigger economy than the UK? Nigel Farage has his unmissable analysis on both those major stories. He's live straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time now for What the Farage, and despite flatline approval ratings and even worse cognitive decline, Joe Biden confirmed today that he plans to run for US president again next year. At 80 years old, the doddery bloke is already the oldest US president in history and would be 86 at the end of his second term if he wins. But he launched his bid regardless today with a dramatic campaign video featuring rioting at the US Capitol by Trump supporters, and despite calling for unity, took aim at so-called MAGA extremists of the Republican Party.
Freedom, personal freedom, is fundamental to who we are as Americans. There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred. That's been the work of my first term. But you know, around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy, dictating what health care decisions women can make. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Nigel Farage, a damning poll from The Times reveals Americans want change, with just 26% saying geriatric Biden should run again. So as Donald Trump looms, could Biden's stubborn refusal here to retire cost Democrats dearly?
Yes, of course it could, but of course the Democrats have nobody else. I mean, who else is there? Maybe Hillary Clinton, maybe Gavin Newsom of the failed state of California. I mean, they literally don't have anybody else. What is surprising isn't that Biden's announced he's running again, but that Kamala Harris is going to be the running mate. I mean, she has been in control of immigration policy. You think we've got a problem with the English Channel? 6 million people have crossed that southern border, and she's barely even been down to visit it. So look, I mean, the whole thing's an absolute joke. There are plenty of 80-year-olds who are mentally and physically fit enough to do that job. Joe Biden, sadly, isn't one of them. He's a complete old duffer. He's a total embarrassment to America. And as leader of the free world, remember, this matters to us hugely as well. With the great global challenges we face of China and everything else, this really is. On one level, it's appalling. But on the other level, it's a complete open goal to the Trump campaign if, and here's the key thing, the Trump campaign have to offer a vision, once again, of the sunlit uplands and not replay what went wrong in the so-called stolen election of 2020. And I feel that very strongly. And, you know, Trump's a friend of mine and he and I disagree on this, but they've got to start looking forwards.
No, indeed. Trump last night, Nigel, we're actually going to play the clip later in the show, but he suggested that Biden actually had to record that message rather than give a live statement because his team was so worried he was going to muck it up. And to be honest, he still didn't sound great, even though that was probably recorded multiple times.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, he's done fewer press interviews than any American president in 40 years. I mean, we saw it in Ireland, didn't we? You know, when he referred to the All Blacks rugby team, he referred to the Black and Tans, which is, talk about red rags to the Republican bull. I mean, goodness gracious me. Yeah, he can't take questions. He's not up to it. You know, he shakes hands with people that don't actually exist. He falls up and down, you know, escalators, you know, steps up to and from aeroplanes. I mean, the whole thing is utterly ridiculous. And I remember when I was younger, looking at Soviet leaders who were elderly and clearly not up to the job. This bloke is not up to the job, but it's good news for the Trump campaign. It really is.
Indeed. Now, look, moving on, Nigel, you speak about the border crisis. Well, today, new data here has shown that it's Indians that make up the second largest cohort of small boat arrivals so far this year, with nearly 700 of them making the journey to the UK. Of course, nearly 4,000 migrants in total have crossed in just 4 months. So what do you make of that, Nigel, given the Indian economy is huge, isn't it? It's thriving in lots of ways.
Well, actually, Dan, just to sort of update you after a couple of calm days, we're now at 5,500.
Wow.
That number is small because March was one of the worst, windiest months with big swells in the channel for many, many decades. Believe you me, I know from the intel I've got that by the middle of June, we are going to be completely and utterly overwhelmed in every way. Now, the young Indian men that are coming come from a democratic country that doesn't qualify for refugee status one little bit. Tomorrow we'll see more debate on the government's illegal migration bill. A vote will take place tomorrow night. Whether that will solve it, given the prejudice and bias that exists, I'm sorry to say, within our own judiciary, who will use human rights, who will use ECHR, whatever they can, remains to be seen. But here's the racket, all right? Why would young Indian men want to come into this country this way? Well, I'll tell you, because they'll put in a claim for asylum for some spurious reason. They'll apply for a university course on the basis of their academic grades in India. And if they get accepted, they'll pay £9,250 a year tuition fees and not the £22,000 a year that Indians have to pay as overseas nationals. That is the racket that is going on.
Gosh, I mean, it is. And so do you think, Nigel, that Indians could almost become like the new Albanians? Is there a real movement from people smugglers to go and attract young Indian men? Because apparently many delivery drivers, for example, are these undocumented Indian men.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, the whole scale of the illegal economy in Britain is absolutely beyond comprehension. And it's what makes it a very attractive place to come. You know, you can earn money. You can work legally, you can work in legal trades or illegal trades, but working illegally very comfortably and very easily, unless the government starts to deport people straight back to India. You're quite right, Dan. This will be the new Albania.
Goodness me. Well, look, you'll keep a watch on that. I know you will. 5,500 already, you say, so far up on the official numbers. Nigel Farage, thank you so much. Of course, Nigel back 7 p.m. tomorrow night here on GB News. But coming up, on a similar note, as Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick makes a rallying speech to protect the integrity of Britain's borders, could this prove to be a watershed moment in the government's mission to stop the boats? My Superstar panel will give their verdict soon. But next, as The Times reveals officials working for Dominic Raab raised concerns that senior civil servants were scheming to get rid of him, does this prove that his dismissal was a stitch-up by the British deep state? Our Tory culture warrior, the former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins, who worked under Raab, she's going to give her unflinching analysis on the snowflake civil service next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead. Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lord David Frost and Tom Bower on the way, but it's time now for Tory culture warrior and former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins to put her middle finger up to the establishment. And the Times newspaper has revealed damning information that appears to prove Dominic Raab was the victim of a British deep state stitch-up. The paper reported today that evidence submitted to the bullying inquiry into Raab included claims from officials who raised concerns that senior managers were plotting to undermine the former deputy PM. Officials revealed that high-ranking civil service staff leaked details of private meetings alleging blunt behaviour from Raab, and even went as far as alleging some private secretaries were suffering from PTSD in a bid to get him out of office. Well, perfect person to speak about this, former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins, because you were private secretary at one point, parliamentary private secretary to Dominic Raab. Did you see any of this behaviour?
Definitely not, Dan. I mean, I was PPS when he was Housing Minister, and, you know, he was always courteous, he was kind, he was fair. And I think, if anything, he's shown integrity. I mean, he did say that he would step down if any of the complaints are held. But I think for me, Dan, what I found disappointing, look how Boris backed Pretty. I would like to have seen the Prime Minister have backed Raab over this, because, I mean, as a minister myself, former minister, I've seen what the civil servants can be like. And let's not forget Raab, I mean, I got to know him really well when he was PPS, is a Thatcherite Tory, is anti-woke.
And pro-Brexit.
And completely pro-Brexit.
Which is everything they despise.
Absolutely, Dan. And I just sort of think...
Did they work against you for that reason as well, the Blob?
I wasn't in it long enough. You know, I was 4 months, I was a minister, but I think, as I mentioned before on your show, Dan, I had to push back several times, especially on the wokey stuff. But, I mean, with Raab, what I worry about, really, is it's set a precedent, and who's going to be next?
I know.
And can you imagine Churchill around nowadays? You know, he wouldn't survive 5 minutes. And where would we be as a country if that was the case?
Absolutely. And the fact is, Dominic Raab was the Deputy Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
He's trying to do really tough things that the civil service are attempting to frustrate. And yet, he can lose his role, and the Prime Minister can not stand by him because he stares hard at some people, because they leave meetings feeling upset. I mean, isn't this snowflake culture now permeating every aspect of government, and it is going to mean things don't get done?
And also, I million% agree, Dan, but I think this is also them thinking that they can stall things, get the true Conservatives out, you know, the centre-right Conservatives, because they think they can stall things because they probably think, you know, one day they'll get a Labour government.
Oh, yeah.
And they think that they can carry on like that. But it's really scary. And I think,
is scary.
And I think that if the PM doesn't start backing the ministers, you know, he could be next one day.
Well, I have to admit, I am incredibly disappointed with the Prime Minister. I actually started the show tonight praising him, Andrew Jenkins, which is not something I do that often, but I think he was incredibly bold and did the right thing to back Miriam Cates and Rosie Duffield on the issue of biological women. And I will praise Sunak when he does something correct. But my panel, you know, Amanda Patel, former chief advisor to William Hague when he was Tory leader. Calvin Robinson, a staunch small C Conservative.
Absolutely.
They are so angry with Sunak for the fact he threw Raab under the bus. And to be honest, so am I, because I remember those days last summer when Sunak was losing that race to Liz Truss in an embarrassing fashion. I was at the Tory party hustings, I think it was in Hastings. And who was the only senior Tory at that point prepared to be by Sunak's side?
That's right.
It was Dominic Raab.
It was.
And unfortunately, I think Sunak has failed on a test of character here.
Well, you never know, Dan. Raab could end up coming back to be leader. You can... Stranger things has happened, haven't they?
True.
And also, I mean, I think as well that, as you've already mentioned, you know, government is... it's always going to be a stressful environment.
Of course.
I'd say to the civil servants, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen.
Man up. You're probably not allowed to say that anymore either. Now, look, Andrew, I want to move on to Channel 4. They're screening this drama claiming to portray the truth about the Partygate scandal, like we haven't heard enough about that phantom cake and stale sandwiches. So the woke broadcaster has signed a deal to air Partygate, the true story, which claims to be based on meticulous research and sources. But the Mail on Sunday has revealed that it will be made by Aisha Raphael, a rabid left-wing Corbynista who has taken to Twitter on a number of occasions to express her hatred for Boris Johnson, and more recently, Suella Braverman. So come on, Andrea. Isn't it time for the Conservative Party to just say enough and sell off Channel 4 as you promised to do in multiple manifestos?
$1,000,000%, Dan. I mean, to me, the only decent thing about Channel 4 is the Father Ted reruns, which is my favourite comedy.
Of course, made by the great Graham Linehan, a regular on this show, who has also been cancelled by the woke mob
he really
for his views on biological sex.
And, but, I mean, look, the Channel 4 was set up to be an alternative voice. And look at the Sick programme recently, where they're having children, adults showing their naked bodies to children. And they just want the shock factor now. And I think that we made a major mistake not carrying on with our, as you said, our manifesto promise to privatise the NHS. We should have done that. And secondly, it would make the BBC stand up and think, oh, maybe we could be next.
Well, indeed. But can I just say, why aren't they making a drama about the fall of the SNP in Scotland, where there are actually serious allegations of criminality? But of course, they're just going to ignore that because all they want to do is constantly hammer the Conservative Party. It's pathetic.
And what about Diane Abbott?
Boring. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, could you see them actually allowing someone to write a programme about Corbyn? It just wouldn't happen. Or the Labour Party.
No, it wouldn't happen, and there are far bigger scandals on that side of politics. So I wouldn't mind if they were equal.
Exactly.
But the problem is, they're only going to make these problems when it is going to bring down the Conservative Party. Our Tory Cox warrior, Andrew Jenkins, thank you so much. We will speak next week, Andrea. But coming up, after Whom's are useless, hilariously asked the Prime Minister for a second referendum last night, should Rishi Sunak actually be reversing Scottish devolution? Well, Tory grandee and Brexit mastermind Lord David Frost joins me live in the studio to set out his bold and daring plan for Scotland. That's soon. But first, Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick delivered a wake-up call to the UK today as he warned that global mass migration is a threat to our sovereignty. So, are virtue-signalling politicians endangering our nation's borders? My superstar panel debate that very shortly. Plus, we're going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Nicola Sturgeon has broken cover as she finally got back to work at the Scottish Parliament following her husband's arrest. And the ex-First Minister refused to apologise to Whom's Eustace for the state she left the party.
I think Humza's doing, in very, very difficult circumstances, an outstanding job. I have become ever more convinced than I was already convinced of this, that he's going to be a very fine First Minister.
What planet is she on? Meanwhile, after Eustace hysterically asked the PM for a second referendum last night, should Sunak do the opposite? and actually reverse devolution, or at least pull it back. Joy Grandee and Brexit mastermind Lord David Frost has ruffled a few feathers, including the First Minister's, with his bold plan to restore prosperity to Scotland. He'll join me live in the studio to take on those snivelling separatists shortly. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, delivered a seminal speech on illegal migration today as he grimly warned that the integrity of our nation's borders are now at stake.
States are to retain their sovereignty, their ability to exclude individuals from their territory, then they will need to find new ways to enforce their laws.
So is Jenrick right that woke politicians' virtue signalling is placing the UK's sovereignty under threat? That's the big debate with my superstar panel next. And tonight, I'm joined by Amanda Patel, Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. The Sussexes enjoyed a date night at an NBA game. But Meghan wasn't playing ball when Harry leaned in for a kiss on camera, kind of like Princess Diana with Charles back in 1992. Awkward. Well, Meghan's biographer Tom Bauer gives his unmissable report on the Montecito Moaners live in the studio in Uncancelled. Plus, Doddery Joe Biden has confirmed he's lumbering to a second run at the presidency.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are.
But it seems like Trump has got Sleepy Joe's number.
But he's doing a tape. This way he can do it 4 or 5 times so he gets it right.
So will Father Time inevitably prevent a Biden-Trump rematch in 2024? We'll debate. Also in the media buzz, as it's revealed, Diane Abbott sent her vile anti-Semitic letter to The Observer twice from her personal email address, seeming to debunk her claim that it was an error-strewn draft. Does the disgraced MP deserve to be forgiven? There'll also be a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the night is out, and the first front pages will arrive. They're going to arrive in mere moments right after Bethany Elsey.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The first flight carrying British nationals out of Sudan has landed in Cyprus with around 40 people on board. Rishi Sunak says there'll be 2 more flights overnight and many more tomorrow. It's understood there are around 4,000 British passport holders in Sudan. There's been fierce fighting in the country between Sudan's army and a rival paramilitary group for more than 2 weeks. The UK's rescue effort was given the go-ahead after they agreed to a 72-hour ceasefire. But there's been reports of gunfire and explosions in major cities, which are making extractions perilous.
The first flight that left took everybody that was at the airfield and eligible is on that flight. There will be more flights this evening and then many more into tomorrow. We're contacting people both directly, but also we've issued out a general call for people, if they can make their way to the airfield, they will then be processed. We can't guarantee the long-term sustainability of the airfield that we're currently using, so we're also exploring and standing up other alternative routes for safe exit.
Nicola Sturgeon has spoken out about the police investigation into SNP finances, saying she couldn't have imagined the events of the past few weeks in her worst nightmares. The former First Minister also said it wasn't true that she stepped down because she knew problems were about to unfold within her party. She was speaking at the Scottish Parliament for the first time since her husband's arrest. Peter Murrell, the party's former chief executive, was questioned by police earlier in the month and released without charge. The party's former treasurer, Colin Beattie, was also arrested last week and released pending further investigation. President Joe Biden has officially announced he's running for a second term in office, saying the next election will be a fight for democracy and personal freedom.
The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. That's why I'm running for re-election.
The US president also confirmed that Vice President Kamala Harris will run again alongside him. And Donald Trump has released a video criticising Joe Biden for the so-called damage he's caused to the country and has called on his supporters for their vote.
With your support in the election, we will defeat Joe Biden in 2024. We will rescue our economy. We will crush inflation. We will stop the invasion on our southern border. We will restore our nation's dignity, and we will prevent World War 3 from happening.
And a man who murdered a 2-year-old while her mother was asleep upstairs has been sentenced to life in prison. Kyle Bevan caused catastrophic brain injuries on Lola James in July 2020. She died in hospital 4 days later. The 31-year-old denied responsibility, claiming the family dog pushed her down the stairs, but he was convicted in April. Lola's mother, Sinead James, has also been sentenced to 6 years in prison after being found guilty of allowing her daughter's death. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. And The Guardian leads with claims Prince Harry has made in court that King Charles undermined the late Queen after she threatened to sue Rupert Murdoch's media company over phone hacking. The High Court heard from the Duke of Sussex that Charles intervened because he wanted the son to support his ascension to the throne. The Metro leads with the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan as the first plane lands in Cyprus carrying just 39 folk on board. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, Conservative commentator the Reverend Calvin Robinson and the author and broadcaster Rebecca Reid. Now, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has delivered a crisis speech on the battle to stop illegal migration in the UK. Tomorrow sees the return of the illegal migration bill to the House of Commons, with some 20 Tory wets still to be appeased by amendments already made by the government. But speaking at the Policy Exchange, Jenrick said that woke politicians' grandstanding and virtue signalling cannot continue as the country's public services, community cohesion and, most pressingly, our sovereignty come under threat.
We have collectively entered an era of mass migration.
If states are to retain their sovereignty, their ability to exclude individuals from their territory, then they will need to find new ways to enforce their laws. Deterrence must be restored. Those that make illegal journeys must know that it will be a futile endeavour.
Jenrick also took aim at what he called humanitarian NIMBYs, averse to seeing more migrants in their own areas, with SNP-run Scotland providing fewer spaces in hotels than the London Borough of Kensington. And he added that Labour's plan of simply tweaking the system from the edges will not deter people from making the dangerous Channel crossing. So, Calvin Robinson, this was a grave warning from Robert Jenrick, and I completely agree. There is going to be a wave of illegal migration, so our sovereignty is under threat. I guess the question is, if that's the case, why doesn't the Prime Minister allow us to leave ECHR? I mean, there's much more that can be done if you really believe this is such a crisis.
I don't think it was a grave warning. I think it was a few canapes and champagne at Policy Exchange. It wasn't anything serious. Again, it's just more rhetoric. They throw out these little pieces of red meat and expect us all to lap it up, and we keep doing it. But I'm with the Scottish SNP on this. I don't think we should have any more hotels hosting these illegal immigrants. We should be deporting them straight away.
The problem is the SNP don't want to deport them, do they?
No, but they don't want them.
Now, interestingly, Calvin, you've actually just returned from Rwanda, which is the country that is at the heart of our possible scheme to at least provide a deterrent.
And all the racist lefties are saying you can't send people to Rwanda.
And you loved it, right?
Oh,
you loved
beautiful.
it there.
Green, hilly, and the people are the most hospitable people you'll ever meet. And actually, it's one of the cleanest countries I've ever been in, cleaner than Germany. It's absolutely wonderful. And people who are saying you cannot send people there, it's inhospitable, it's racist, it's all this and that, they are the bad guys. Because actually, the Rwandans want this because it will help boost their economy. They want to work with us in this programme, so everybody wins.
The objection isn't because everyone's like Rwanda's a rubbish country.
It is.
That's a huge...
There's a lot of sneering.
A lot of sneering. Even if we're sending to Mauritius, I would still be like, probably shouldn't. You can't send people to a country they don't want to go to against
Why not?
their will. Why can't you send people to countries they don't want to go to?
So you just think you can pitch up at any country and be allowed to stay?
I've been very clear that I think that you should be able to.
So you do not believe in British sovereignty, you do not believe in international borders?
We've had this conversation many times before.
What makes us England?
I mean, I don't know what does make us England. Is it really... what I can't get my head around is the idea that anybody believes that through the absolute accident of birth, happening to be born here, they have the right to a better life than anybody else. And yes, OK, these people are maybe economic migrants, but there's a reason you leave to become an economic migrant, because you need to.
So you believe in anarchy?
And fun.
Like most of the left. No, but you do, don't you? You believe in ocean borders, you believe in anarchy, you believe in a system where we're not protected. I mean, Amanda Patel, do you want to weigh in here?
I just kind of I despair at the whole bloody thing. I mean, we've got to close our borders and we've got to stop blaming these ruthless gangs and put the responsibility on people who come here illegally and have a complete deterrent which says, you arrive here, you're gonna be sent away. And the whole thing with Scotland, I mean, it is, you can't blame illegal migrants for not wanting to go to Scotland. I mean, seriously.
That's rude.
You know, they arrive in London, they go, Scotland, you must be joking.
Oh, come on, I prefer Scotland over London any day.
Look at the NHS waiting lists. You know, look at the only thing that would entice them, a lot of them, would be the fact it's got such a drug problem up there. So they get all their gangs going.
Amanda!
Excuse me. As a man with a partner from Scotland, it is my favourite nation, and I cannot wait till I'm back in Prestwick eating the haggis. All I wish when I'm there is that I didn't have a damn useless SNP politician trying to divide the country. Now, look.
That was a lot, wasn't it?
80-year-old Joe Biden announced his 2024 presidential re-election bid. But instead of appearing in front of waving supporters, as is typical for the candidates, you know, to actually speak live and put out your message on television, the doddery Democrat avoided further embarrassing gaffes by releasing a pre-recorded video. Watch.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are.
And in anticipation of Biden's declaration, Donald Trump picked up his attack on Sleepy Joe in a trademark interview. This was with Newsmax last night. Watch.
Joe Biden is said to be on the verge of declaring tomorrow, maybe. Do you think that's really going to happen? And if it does, in your gut, do you think he's actually going to be the nominee of the Democrat Party?
It seems hard to believe, and I'm not speaking from any standpoint other than I watch him like everybody else watches him. And now they're actually doing a tape of the announcement. He's not going to make the announcement. You know, normally you get up and you say, hey, I'm running, and wish me luck, everybody. But he's doing a tape. This way he can do it 4 or 5 times so he gets it right. It would seem to me that somewhere along the line something will happen.
Fighting talk from the Donald. Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel do stand by, because coming up, as it's revealed that Labour's Diane Abbott, or should I say Diane Bigot, sent her race letter to the Observer twice from a personal email address, are the left correct to suggest we should simply just accept her apology and move on? They really do that all the time, don't they? Not. My superstar panel gets stuck into this one, plus we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you very soon. But next, as the Scottish Separatist Party is torn apart by alleged corruption and scandal, should our Westminster government put the devolution process into reverse? Chief Brexit negotiator Lord Frost certainly thinks so. He's live in the studio straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Nicola Sturgeon has finally emerged from her bunker and looking like a politician on the edge. She flatly denied throwing her successor, Humza Useless, under the bus, saying that her resignation had nothing to do with the bombshell investigation into SNP finances.
I think Humza's doing, in very, very difficult circumstances, an outstanding job. I have become ever more convinced than I was already convinced of this, that he's going to be a very fine First Minister. I understand the view that some people might have, that I knew this was all about to unfold and that's why I walked away. Nothing could be further from the truth. I could not have anticipated in my worst nightmares what would have unfolded over the past few weeks. I believe the SNP, notwithstanding the real difficulties that surrounds the party just now, is in good shape, and I think Humza will take it to even better things.
Really, Nicola? Because here he is giving the most bizarre defence against the Sunday Mail's bombshell report that police are on the hunt for SNP burner phones.
Ever used a burner phone?
No.
Have you ever heard of anyone in your party talking about burner phones?
No.
Would you be extremely surprised if that turned out to be the case?
Yes, but it depends. I mean, for example, when you run a campaign, instead of using your personal phone, people might well buy a new SIM card and a new telephone number and make that the campaign phone number. So it depends on your definition of what you mean by a burner phone. So,
well, burner phones are about anonymity, aren't they? They're usually seen as something that people use to cover tracks.
So if it's that, then of course I'd be surprised.
Goodness me. He was speaking after he had met the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for the first time, during which he had the gall to ask for another separatist referendum. And commenting on the meeting, a spokesman for the SNP said the First Minister raised concerns around the UK government's attacks on devolution, including comments on devolution from Lord Frost. So, of course, the Tory grandee and Brexit mastermind caused quite a stir last week when he made this bold appeal to put failing devolution into reverse. And to respond to some of the attacks he's received north of the border, I'm delighted to say that Lord Frost joins me in the studio now. So, firstly, I guess your response, Lord Frost, to the fact that the Scottish First Minister actually raised your column with Rishi Sunak. Have you heard from the Prime Minister? Is he trying to stop you talking about this?
No, absolutely not. And I think there has actually been quite a lot of private messaging, not from the Prime Minister, but from sympathisers in the party who say, keep talking. This needs to be said. And it's always nice to be talked about. But I think what I've learned is that I've touched a nerve. And some people think we do need to talk about this.
And tell me why. Is your case that the SNP have done such a bad job of governing Scotland? I mean, and they have literally driven this nation into the ground, that it just proves devolution doesn't work? Because I guess the fans of devolution would say, actually, you can't blame the system, you've got to blame scheming Sturgeon.
I mean, obviously, the SNP are interested in independence. They're not interested in governing Scotland well, and we've learned that. That's absolutely clear. But the bigger problem is that conventional wisdom across all the parties for the last 15, 20 years has said the way to defuse independence, to make it go away as an issue, is to give more devolved powers to Scotland. And we've done that time and time again. And what has happened? It's got worse. Independence has got stronger, the SNP has got stronger, and I think we have ridden that tiger long enough. It's come close to dismembering the country, and it's time to stop and have a proper debate about, does Scotland need all these powers? Does it need these powers to raise taxes, be a sort of semi-independent state on the world stage? I don't think so. I think it's reasonable they should have the powers to administer Scotland fairly and reasonably. They don't need more than that.
Because you could see over the COVID pandemic just how concerning these powers could be. I mean, there were times when Sturgeon was literally proposing some sort of border between Scotland and England, for example, to stop the pesky English people bringing COVID into the country. I mean, that's insane. You can't put any form of border between a country, can you?
I mean, and of course, the SNP were running their own sort of immigration policy during the pandemic as well. Nobody thought that devolved powers were going to mean that. But the trouble is that one thing leads to another. And the SNP, they believe in independence. They use every lever they've got to say, well, if you just give us this more power, this one more power, we'll be able to make this other one work well, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, you're a long way down the slippery slope. And we are very unusual in this country in even contemplating independence for part of our country. So I really think that it's time for us to get a grip and constrain the debate, constrain the powers, and try and move to a different place.
And also, they really had a decent chance, didn't they? You know, you can't say the SNP haven't had the time or the support from the Westminster government in terms of funding to turn the nation around. And they have actually done the total opposite. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at the health system, whether you're looking at the education system, whether you're looking at standard of living. On every metric, the SNP have failed Scots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, public spending is quite a lot higher per head in Scotland than it is in England, and it's English taxpayers who fund a lot of that difference. And yet the services are a lot worse, and that's because they're not interested in running the services well. They're interested in stoking grievance and saying, we don't get enough money from London.
And often using taxpayer money, by the way, to stoke grievance, which is, I think, particularly outrageous.
Absolutely. And, you know, having their own sort of mini embassies around the world funded by the taxpayer to promote independence. None of this was envisaged, and none of it should be happening, and we should be much tougher.
No, indeed. But I think it's fair to say, though, it isn't just folk within the SNP who you've upset, because, of course, you have been attacked by Tories, by MSPs, even the leader of the Scottish Tory party, Douglas Ross, actually attacked your call to put devolution into reverse. What's your response to Scottish Tories?
Well, I think they need to see the bigger picture. To be honest, it isn't about tactics, it's about strategy and the future of the country. And I'm afraid Scottish Conservatives have failed to lay a glove on the SNP for the last 15 years. Some of them even voted in favour of this wretched gender reform bill that's caused the crisis. You know, we need to take a step back. It isn't just about winning 1 or 2 extra % in the next Scottish election. It is about the future of the country, and we need to think, have Scotland got the right powers? Are they administering them well? And we should be serious about that.
What do you make of the fall of Scheming Sturgeon? Because it's hard to think of any modern British political figure who went from having a cast-iron grip over her party, over the entire political system of her nation, to being so humiliated, destroyed, with a legacy now that I think is totally damaged.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, obviously, we can't really comment on what's going on within the
Not in
party
terms of the police investigation.
The investigation and all of that. But I think...
But I'm talking politics.
What happened to her, I think, was she sort of ran into a brick wall. When the UK government finally said, and the Supreme Court said, there isn't going to be another independence referendum, when the government said, this gender reform bill is not going to go through, that was the end. She kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and when she realised there was nowhere else to go, it produced the crisis. And that's what the lesson, I think, that needs to be learned. We need to be robust. We need to say, so far and no further.
And a word on this continuity candidate, the bloke who I call Humza Useless, who was the most incompetent minister in Scottish politics. Every portfolio he went into, he caused catastrophic damage. He got the gig because, bizarrely, Sturgeon and Peter Murrell, now arrested, backed him. But he's not up to the job, is he? And this is so worrying for Scottish people.
I mean, if you look at what a few senior figures in the SNP have been saying, even on the record, they've been quite lukewarm about Humza and his achievements. So I think there is a lot of nervousness and edginess about whether he can take the party forward. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he doesn't last that long, to be honest, and that things change, which is a reason to look at the constitutional structure and not just the party. The SNP has been around for a long time. There's a lot of support for independence in Scotland even now. They may yet reinvent themselves. They may well be back. This chaos may not last. That's why it's important to look at the big picture, not just the current politics.
And so, if you were Prime Minister, how would you deal with it? What would you actually do? How much would you curtail? Do you need to put it to some sort of UK-wide referendum? I mean, how do you reverse devolution in practice?
So I think we should look at other devolved administrations around Europe, many of whom manage with many less powers than Scotland's got. We do need a debate. I don't think you need another referendum in Scotland. The only referendum in Scotland, other than the one on independence, was in '98. All the other increases in powers have just come through legislation. They all depend on the Westminster government, and I think it's entirely reasonable to draw the boundaries, have the discussion and legislate. And I think if we take that on, we would find that quite a few people would be willing to go with us.
Lord Frost, very powerful argument. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you.
And, of course, an important legal note, the allegations surrounding the SNP's finances are denied by all parties involved. The police investigation is ongoing and no charges have been brought against anyone. Coming up in Uncancelled, have Harry and Meghan moved to quash rumours of them living increasingly separate lives with their appearance together at a basketball game in LA? And is Harry longing for a return to Britain? Tom Bauer joins me live in the studio imminently to dissect the latest. But next in the media buzz, as new bombshell revelations blow apart Diane Abbott's excuse for writing an abhorrent anti-Semitic letter to the Observer newspaper, why is the left moving so swiftly to excuse her behaviour? My superstar panel are riled up and ready to go on this next. Plus, we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Another chilly night for many of us, but not for all. There'll be cloudier skies towards the southwest
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
More front pages in my hot little hands. And the Daily Mail leads with Bank of England bigwig Hugh Pill's comments that Brits must accept they're worst off and stop asking for pay rises, which has gone down about as well as you might expect, given that this bloke is paid £190,000 a year. And I'm obsessed with this. Charles from the Chocolate Factory, a bust of the king made entirely from chocolate. And I have to say, it looks too good to eat.
How much does it cost?
It looks too good to eat. I don't know how much it costs. This is your newspaper. Do you have any scoop on this?
I do not know.
That's Amanda Patel with me, by the way, top Daily Mail columnist. And the Daily Telegraph reports that hopes of a coronation truce between Prince Harry and William have been left in tatters, with the Duke of Sussex's claims in court papers that his brother received a secret payout from Rupert Murdoch's company over phone hacking. It's understood William wasn't made aware of Harry's claims at the High Court until it was made public just 12 days before their father's coronation next week, where they will be reunited for the first time since the late Queen's funeral. How low can this bloke go? He is a disgrace, and this is why Charles should never have invited him to the coronation. I did say that.
I know.
We didn't want him here because this is the type of trouble he's going to cause.
And he's being a decent father.
Rebecca Reed with us too, backing Charles. Calvin Robinson, he shouldn't be here, should he?
No, he's a danger to the crown at this point. He should be kept well away.
Couldn't agree more.
And Charles is now the father of the nation, of the kingdom.
He's a lot of
Not
kids.
just that.
Of Christendom entirely.
Charles is our daddy.
Indeed, so to speak. Tom Bauer here very shortly on all of that. But first, Diane Abbott's anti-Semitism row took a fresh twist today with new allegations that she lied about accidentally sending a draft version of her racist letter to the Observer newspaper. Abbott, who has lost the Labour whip for writing that Jews don't experience racism, only prejudice similar to gingers, reportedly sent the letter twice after being asked to add her address to a second version. She made no effort to remove her anti-Semitic claims in the new version, nor in the 7 days after that, before it was eventually published. So the revelations totally debunk Abbott's claim that she sent an incorrect version by mistake. So, look, I've got so much to unpick on this, but Amanda Patel first, can we just be clear, if this revelation is true, Abbott's excuse is a complete and utter lie. This wasn't a draft. You don't send a draft twice and then wait 7 days for it to be published. This is what she thinks.
No, it's she's tried to weasel her way out of it.
Yeah, with a lie.
With a complete lie. And what you can't, you know, all of us, you know, we're journalists. We think about things before we write them. We never write, you know, I would never write anything that I did not believe.
No.
And that's what really worries me about this with Abbott, is that what she wrote was horrendous. And the fact that she actually said, well, you know, you haven't suffered racism unless you're a black person who has sat at the back of a bus. Just let me finish.
Yeah, of course.
6 million Jewish people who were murdered by Hitler did not even get the chance to get on a bus. They were put on trains straight into the gas chambers. How could she make that, you know, how could she get to that place? It speaks to a really dark place inside her, which is an arrogance that only people like her suffer from racism.
But what I'm astonished by, though, Amanda, is that you have the Liberal elite in this country, so the likes of Robert Peston, saying we should all just move on. But what I don't understand is that they would never do it if it was from someone on the other side of politics. They would say they should be finished and cancelled and should never come back.
We cannot move on from what Diane Abbott said. It is a watershed moment for the Labour Party. Keir Starmer coming out, immediately suspending her, jolly good. She should be kicked out of the Labour Party.
But he hasn't said she won't run again.
Yeah, I know he hasn't, but she should be kicked out. And if she had a shred of decency in her soul, she would quit the party and spare them the shame. But she doesn't.
I agree with you. I think that she should do the decent thing, and I think she should quit. But I would say I have seen lots of people. Owen Jones decried her. Lots of very, very left-wing people have said it's a real shame, given that she did some incredible work over her career. But it's indefensible. It is an indefensible piece of writing, and I don't think anybody sensible on the left is trying to defend her. Peston did actually backtrack a bit after the
but only after he got the backlash.
Yeah, I know.
And then only after. And I'm just wondering. The only other small comments is I'm just wondering. We all know that there are rules about sending emails, especially things that are your personal voice. I'm just wondering if the fact she sent it twice, maybe it was one of those late-night emails, you know,
A few M&S cans maybe had been consumed. Yeah, but come on, if you sent a drunken letter, you could call up the editor and say, sorry, I didn't mean to send that, had a couple of drinks. Don't publish it.
It wouldn't make any difference. I drunk message people all the time. That doesn't mean that I don't mean the things I'm saying. It doesn't mean it's not my fault. It doesn't mean I have to take responsibility.
But also the
for
point is she had a chance to retract it over 7 days. But Calvin Robinson, what interests me about this, and I really value your point of view, is that you do actually think that we should accept Diane's apology. Now, in some ways I agree with you, but the problem that I have, Calvin, is that no one on the left ever feels that way when someone on the centre-right makes a mistake. They want to skewer the person.
You're right.
They want to drive them out of their job. They want to ensure they never work again. So why all of a sudden, given this is about someone on the left, a figure who they completely revere, that they're so quick to forgive her?
So I'll get to that, but firstly, you would struggle to find a group more persecuted than the Jews. So for Diane to say that they're not victims of racism or can't be, shows that she's succumbed to the mindset of critical race theory. This idea that only black people can be victims of racism. That is a dangerous... This is why I have spoken so long about CRT being dangerous, because this is the kind of results that it brings about. But why I think we should forgive her is because she's apologised. Yes, she should lose her whip. Yes, she should be out of frontline politics, but we should absolutely forgive her.
She also lied.
Yeah, I know.
But it's not really an apology. I would say an apology with a lie in it's not really an apology. If she had said, look, do you know what, that was a dreadful thing to say, I've seen there of my ways and I apologise, I would say
you're right.
But if you lie in the middle, it's...
But she still has to stand
That's the problem. She's like, look, but the reality is there is no way that Peston would feel the same.
But we have to be
if
better
this
than
was
them.
a
The left-
white Conservative Party
We have to be
MP
better
talking
than them. No,
about
it is
a
true.
black
What
Labour
Dan's saying is
politician.
absolutely true, because the left hounds you and
I am-
abuse you, and
I
they will
am-
use anything they
I
can
am of-
against you to
I am
cancel
of the
you.
left, and I do not believe in cancel culture particularly. I think when people are...
but
people
you're-
Look at AOC.
tribe
Look at AOC
do-
today, right?
Who has apologised
So Carlson,
from the
Isn't
right?
there something-
as an example.
Who has apologised from the right and not been forgiven?
As an example.
Isn't there something quite interesting? I've worked in the Conservative Party for a long time, and there are a lot of Jewish people who work in it. What is Labour's problem with Jewish people? Is it the fact that they are anti-Semitic to their core? Why do they hate the Jewish
Very
people
good
so
point.
much?
And Kevin, you just wanted to make a point about AOC?
Yes, because Carlson Tucker has left Fox. Tucker Carlson, has left Fox, and AOC has been saying, this is great, we need to deplatform these people. Just out and out saying what we've been saying for so long, that the left really want to deplatform, they want to cancel us because they don't want to debate us, because they know that their arguments don't stand up.
This is it's not comparable. This is a really good example. Diane Abbott screwed up. She apologised. You're saying she should be forgiven. Who on the right has messed up, apologised, and not been forgiven?
Oh my goodness, are you joking? I could find you the longest list, seriously.
Give
but
me
Amanda,
one
on
name.
your fundamental question, though, I actually do believe that is the real nub of this argument. Labour is not just the nasty party anymore, it is the racist party.
And Labour has
don't
an
you think there's
anti-Semitism problem
something
and
that-
always has, absolutely. Everybody I know
But
who's
there's
in Labour
something
acknowledges
core about Labour and anti-Semitism, and I think it
it's rotten.
fundamentally goes back to the point that they despise anyone who is successful with creating wealth.
Yeah. Indeed.
I think it's very important that we clarify that not all Jewish people are successful with creating wealth, and wealth and Judaism are not inherently linked, and that's not. I know you're being nice. But that is an anti-Semitic trope. Like wealthy and Jewish are not always linked. They don't always come together.
I
We
was
shouldn't
referring to
perpetuate
my
the
experience
idea.
in the Tory party, and I know that there are a lot of very wealthy Conservatives there who are Jewish.
Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel, thank you so much, and do stand by. But look, finally, I just want to we've all seen how no-nonsense motorists on the continent deal with road-blocking eco-protesters, grabbing them by the collar and throwing them to the curb. But it seems British drivers aren't being given the same privilege when it comes to dealing with disruptive eco-loons. If this damning footage I really want to play you, actually, is anything to go by. One angry driver in London was threatened with arrest by swooping coppers when he tried clearing the road of Just Stop Oil dorks as he tried getting to work. Watch.
Let's go, mate. I'm not having it. I'm not having it. Mate, let's go. Every single one of them. Mate, let's move your vehicle. Let's move out the way. Move out the way.
Listen.
Mate, we've got to go work.
Yes, stand back there. Stand back there. That's assault. Right, so you can't do that. Now, if you do that, that is a crime. Right, so we're not going to do that anymore.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be late today. What will you do? You know what?
Woke policing strikes again. That makes me so angry. Deal with the eco-terrorists, not the people trying to get to work, for goodness sake. Coming up, after the bombshell exit of America's most successful news anchor, Tucker Carlson, from Fox News, as Calvin just referred to, is this a sorry turn of events for free speech broadcasting? My superstar panel offer their views as we crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But before that, in Uncancelled, amid speculation the Montecito Monas are increasingly leading separate lives, the couple were finally seen together on a date night yesterday. But did Meghan swerve a kiss from Harry? The esteemed royal biographer Tom Bauer gives his unmissable verdict on all of the Sussex drama. He's live in the studio in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And breaking tonight, the Daily Telegraph has revealed that hopes of a coronation truce between Prince Harry and Prince William are in tatters after the Duke of Sussex has claimed that his brother received a secret payment from Rupert Murdoch's company over phone hacking. Now, Harry made the bombshell allegations in High Court papers made public today as part of his case against the owners of the News of the World and The Sun. Would you believe it? Little Miss Privacy, Meghan Markle, has also finally been spotted with her husband for the first time in over a month overnight as the Duke and Duchess of Illusion attended an NBA basketball fixture in LA with speculation they are leading increasingly separate lives. The pernicious pair were in stellar Hollywood company as they joined Kim Kardashian, Adam Sandler and 20,000 spectators at the crypto arena. But the rumour mill is back in full swing after Meghan appeared to reject hapless Harry's romantic advances for the crowds and the world to see. Oh dear, humiliated Harry just can't seem to catch a break after the People magazine's front page splash last week featured an interview with a friend of the couple, makeup artist Daniel Martin, who admitted that the runaway prince does miss home back in the UK. Well, I'm delighted to welcome back to the studio esteemed royal biographer, Tom Bowers. So, Tom, look, all of these different storylines coming together. We've also had the leak of the information about the letter that Meghan apparently sent to Charles following the Oprah interview. All this, Tom, happening 12 days before the coronation, when all of our focus is meant to be on King Charles.
Well, I fear it's exactly what we've been predicting would happen. And the tragedy of it all is that the photographs of Meghan yesterday smiling at the Lakers match and all the rest of it came from America, and that dominated the news. And there's Charles and Camilla posing under a tree. And for the public, this is all just confusing. The focus should have been on Charles. He should have, at this moment, be giving an interview explaining what being King of England means. He should be dominating the headlines. But the palace has allowed the Sussexes to run away with the agenda.
Well, they've stolen the media narrative now, haven't
totally.
they?
And I find this whole letter really perplexing. I don't believe anything about the way the Telegraph has reported the letter. I don't believe that Charles wrote to Meghan after the Oprah Winfrey interview, after her 17 lies, and she writes back and says, oh, sorry, it wasn't as bad as I said. It all doesn't make sense. So I think what is really happening is that the Sussexes, very cleverly, have always picked on the Telegraph because they don't like the tabloids. They feed them these stories, then deny them, say it's not as bad as the Telegraph foolishly interpreted it as. But in the end, they're brilliantly and unfortunately disastrously focusing on them and their complaints and detracting from the king. And that is a real tragedy.
Well, no one's talking about the coronation now because it's all about these revelations in court where Harry has yet again thrown his brother under the bus, revealing private information. But it's even more than that. He's also inferring that the reason that Charles didn't want William and Harry to take a phone hacking court case against the publishers of The Sun was because he just wanted the son on side, so that they would support
which of course
him
is
becoming
ridiculous.
king.
Of course, that's ridiculous. The whole point is that many people, very famous people, got very secret settlements with News Group, and they got more money if they promised not to reveal that they'd got any money. So William was not the only famous person to get that sort of settlement. So of course it's rubbish, but we all know Harry is playing a real appalling game. 4 cases running in the High Court, all high profile, all intended to undermine not only the media, but also his father and the royal family. And he's getting great pleasure out of it. And that's the tragedy. Of course, he's egged on by Meghan, who puts out this story, this ridiculous about the letter, and also that she really admires a man called Harriman, who is her photographer. Well, Harriman is now the head of the South Bank complex, which is he's successfully running into the ground with his ridiculous programmes of diversity and everything. And so she's
just the sort of person she would support.
Just the sort of person she'd like, and just the sort of useless person who the powers that be appointed to run without any experience of music at all. And this is the whole problem. She is insidiously undermining what's happening in Britain because King Charles, did not strike when the iron was hot and get rid of her.
Well, I agree with that. What about this highly choreographed appearance last night at the basketball in LA? Because this comes just as there had been increasing talk and speculation about the fact that Harry and Meghan were leading separate lives, at least professionally. But despite the fact they were seen in public, Meghan didn't seem to want there to be a public display of affection. Now, that does go against the way that she has behaved previously, where she loves being all over Harry in public.
Well, she does. And what was more interesting to me, though, was who she was surrounded with. It was all her crew. It was her staff. And, of course, Gurno, the lawyer, who's the man she relied on when she was the Duchess in England, invited him, of course, to her wedding, and he was always running the business side for Meghan, and he was right next to her. And that is really the most interesting thing about what's happening. She is gearing up with this story about she's had her whole face and appearance rejigged too, clearly ready to strike hard just when the coronation happens. And the palace is allowing this to happen. And the only way, in my view, in which they can actually now undermine Meghan and Harry's assault is for King Charles to give an interview, to explain what the coronation is about, what his reign is about, what he believes in, and to actually stamp his image and his views on Britain
today. Because right now, we don't really have any idea.
Exactly.
But you don't think we should read too much into the fact that she specifically turned away from Harry at the moment when he leaned into trying to...
I think it's all staged. Everything is staged with Meghan. That's her genius. She clearly didn't want to have a kiss there and then, for whatever reason. Perhaps we can smudge her makeup. Who knows? But the point is, they were sitting next to each other for one particular purpose, and that was for those pictures to be seen in Britain and for us to be talking about it. What on earth are they doing so close to the coronation? And that's the tragedy.
Tom, they want to destroy the coronation.
They want to destroy the coronation. They want all the attention on them. They want to show how awful the royal family was, not to give them what they demanded. And they think they're on a winner. And King Charles's mistake is that he's giving them the oxygen and the fuel to run their campaign.
Well, shame on them, Tom Bauer. And, of course, you're going to be with us all next week in the lead-up to the coronation as well. Thank you so much, Tom Bauer, author, of course, of the Meghan biography, Revenge. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And my superstar panel return. Amanda Patel, who is your Greatest Britain nominee tonight?
A collective one, Dan. It's all the Special Forces and our SAS, who we're not supposed to know are there, who've got Brits out of Sudan, although I do wish that some of them might have thought about getting out themselves when the war broke out before Easter.
Good
anyway,
point.
They're mine.
Good choice. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
It's honorary. It's Tucker Carlson, because he's been standing up for the truth, and sometimes when you stick your head above the parapet, it gets chopped off.
And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, for saying that when he gets into power, it'll go on the curriculum for young men to have lessons in respecting women, which might make a nice change.
Sir Keir. But no, look, this is a tough one for me because I'm a huge fan, actually, of Tucker Carlson. think he's an amazing man. But given the life and death nature of Amanda Patel's nominee, I really feel I need to go with the British Special Forces tonight. Union Jackass time now. Amanda Patel, your nominee.
It's got to be Meghan after her stunt last night at the...
What did you make of that?
Look, it was a complete nutter stunt. She was there. Did
she purposefully turn away?
20,000, no, I think it's the point that 20,000 people were there in the stadium. Millions and millions of people watch it on TV. She was there, first time she's been with Harry, to try and overshadow the coronation. Back off, Meghan, just you're a horrible troublemaker.
Yeah,
just
indeed.
Go away and stop it.
Amen. Totally. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Another honorary one. This is Joe Biden. I mean, it's just cruel at this point, isn't it? He's far too old and too senile to run again. Run again? He can't even walk, bless him. I don't know what this is all about.
He can't even speak. Rebecca Reed, your nominee?
Mine is another honorary one. It's Tucker Carlson.
Oh, come off. If you actually copy my GB to use for your UJ.
As if they would tell me. Yeah, a thoroughly unpleasant man. Delighted to see that he no longer has a job.
Way?
And, well, for instance, I want to get the wording right. Accused by guest booker Abby Grossberg as somebody is perpetuating vile sexist stereotypes in the workplace.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a civil court case in America from someone who wants to make big bucks.
Sounds like a liberal producer to me.
Like
None of that has been...
Liberal producer.
None of that has been proven. But look, in this case, even though I'm very tempted to go with Amanda, I've actually got to go with Calvin Robinson because this is so important for the world. The idea that Joe Biden believes he can spend 4 more years running the free world is as terrifying as it is ridiculous. Great to have you back, Calvin Robinson. Thank you to my brilliant superstar panellists Amanda Patel and Rebecca Reed. I'm back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Thank you for your company as well. Absolutely love the show. Next up, though, it's Headliners with their irreverent take on tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey here to bring you up to date from the GB newsroom. The first flight carrying British nationals out of Sudan has landed in Cyprus with around 40 people on board. Rishi Sunak says there'll be 2 more flights overnight and many more tomorrow. It's understood around 4,000 British passports